by former Governor James Hogg. The site is then purchased by former Governor James Hogg, who bought it specifically because he thought there would be oil deposits in the area. He died in 1906, but his family discovered oil on the property in 1920. So his children continued to use the property as a weekend home and retain the mineral rights, becoming a very wealthy family. The site remained in the Hogg family until Emma Hogg, Governor Hogg's daughter, donated it to the state in 1957. It was managed by Parks and Wildlife until 2008 when it was transferred to the Historic Sites Division of the Historical Commission. And so in this bottom right, you'll see the original 4,400 acre land grant, and then you'll see the green, which is the 66 acres that Imahog donated to the state. So the 66 acres comprise the core of the park, but there's another couple hundred acres around that the state has purchased in the years between Imahog donating it and today. So after its donation, and under the guidance of Texas Parks and Wildlife, research was undertaken to better understand the historic, architectural, and archaeological resources at the Varner Hogg Plantation. Many of the standing structures date to the 20th century of the Hogg occupation. So this causes a bit of a conundrum when we want to look at the 19th century resources. Not only have the Hoggs constructed new buildings, but they also removed many of the earlier structures, reused bricks from earlier buildings, and sold old metal implements and machinery to scrap dealers. During the Hoggs' tenure, utilities became a major part of the renovations, which included adding electricity, telephone lines, plumbing, and wastewater to the site. And all of this kind of new construction is on top of the oil exploration, road construction and landscaping that have occurred on the property. So over the almost 200 years now of the site, there's been multiple phases of construction and demolition and renovation. So the previous archaeology at Varner Hogg can be split up into three categories. The 1970s, Texas Parks and Wildlife, they did surface surveys and small test excavations. The 1980s and 90s, Parks and Wildlife, which targeted areas of the site for stabilization. And then the ECOM 2010 and other CRM projects that have happened on site. So these are projects just for new signage, parking lots, an oil pipeline, or an electric transmission line that ran through some of the land that was purchased after 1957. But really the majority of the archaeology has happened either in the 70s and 80s or in the past few years with this historical commission. So for TPWD, the first steps were to conduct a comprehensive surface survey over the entire property to isolate areas that had visible cultural remains. If you've been to Varner Hogg previously, you'll know that it's very park-like, but in the 1970s, it was very overgrown. And so TPWD was successful in identifying areas for some future testing, but a lot of their efforts were hampered by overgrowth in the property. So this map is from the 1979 TPWD surface survey. You can see they have a variety of objects that they found. So they broke it apart for things like oil pads and construction, water towers, different types of archaeological scatters like brick scatters or ceramic scatters and different things. From this survey, they were able to isolate a few areas that became a priority for the future work at Varner Hogg. This included the east side of the creek, which was known at the time to contain remnants of the sugar mill, the main house complex, and the corral/garage area that is currently behind our concession stand/restroom building. And so while many locations were surveyed and tested, the two main ones that we're going to look at today are the main house and the quarters area because they have a direct impact on what work was being done at Varner Hogg in the past couple years. So across the creek at the picnic loop, an area that was identified during the 1979 survey was tested during 1980 and 1981. These tests revealed a two-room structure with a central double hearth fireplace that is believed to be one of the slave quarters, and it's depicted here as structure 1 on the left. Two other structures, structures 2 and 3, were also revealed during the testing. These two structures were not as attacked as structure 1, but are also believed to be slave quarters. So you can see structure 2 in the bottom right. In the sense, when I say testing, we should really think loose terms because it mainly composed them desodding the brick foundations and trying to figure out kind of what was there underneath the bricks. And there were no significant testing level excavations inside any of these areas. Overall, across the creek, there were 6 structures, and the sugar mill were surveyed and then tested. 3 structures are thought to be brick slave quarters. 1 is a potential wooden slave quarter. 1 is a large building of unknown use, and 1 is thought to be a workspace. So now to the main house. Archaeology has occurred off and on at the Varner Hogg main house since the late 1970s. Initial tests in 1979 were conducted in the crawl space area underneath the house. These tests wanted to assess the importance and existence of deposits underneath the house. It was also conducted to assess the impact of a new construction relating to air conditioning systems for the house. They did not remove any of the floorboards during these excavations. They decided to cut holes directly into the nice, beautiful hardwood floors. You can still see these access hatches today when you visit the site. The 1979 map is shown in the top left of this panel, where they did some of their trenching and testing. In 1981, they came back to the house for more extensive testing to see what was adjacent to the exterior of the buildings, as these areas were going to be impacted by upcoming construction projects. And then in 1988, they returned to the house again to prepare for the installation of new electrical lines. See that map on the right diagram? Trenching next to the house to see where the new lines were going to impact anything. So the historic context around the main house contained a variety of artifact types across many years. Construction debris is mixed with personal items and household goods. Parks and Wildlife noted that prehistoric deposits are intact underneath the house deposits, but as we'll see later, they were very optimistic in their version of intactness for the area. And so this brings us forward to the more recent excavations on site. In 2019, the Historical Commission endeavored to begin a partnership with Rice University to provide archaeology opportunities to their field techniques class, which has been offered every spring semester for the past 3 or 4 years. For the first year of this partnership in 2020, they decided to excavate a small number of test units on the east side of the creek in an area that I showed earlier called Structure 3. During 2020, 2022, and 2023, the Rice University Field Techniques class excavated at the site during weekends from January to March, depending on the semester calendar. Overall, each field season had about 8 to 10 days. The 2021 field season was postponed due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Some of the basic research questions that were formed for this area is, what exactly is this structure? Is it a domestic structure, or did it have a different purpose? And can it help us further understand the overall layout and site plan of the plantation era landscape and what can be told about the people who lived here? So in this little map, you'll see that on the top left, you have structure 1, 2, and 3 lined up, and those are the quarters at Varner Hogg. The 2020 excavation started with 3 units, but did not finish one because it was holding water. The 2020 class finished their field season, but they were unable to do any lab work because COVID kind of shut everything down. So all of their lab components were done virtually. So the red outline at the top right is the exposed quarter at Varner, to structure 1, which has the kind of interpretive panel by it if you've ever been to Varner. The one in the middle is structure 2, and the one on the left is structure 3. And then you'll see the 3 yellow squares, which are where everybody hoped the units were going to land up based on their measuring and Parks and Wildlife's measuring. But as we'll see, it maybe didn't line up exactly as they thought things were going to. So in 2020, they excavated three 2 by 2 meter units. So for the 2020 results, they starting with architectural remains. In one unit, they discovered a thin layer of brick rubble. Some sections appeared to be more intact than others. Bricks were removed as they became loose. The southwest corner was mostly intact and was not removed in 2020. They originally thought this might be an individual feature, such as a porch pier or something of that nature, but as we'll see later, seems to be a part of a larger feature. In these photos, you can see the areas with a tent and then without a tent. So that spring was pretty rainy. So they about halfway through the season, they decided to put up this military tent that we had at Varner Hogg. Then the rain that they caused also a lot of problems with the sites, and so that's why the back unit was not finished. The final analysis of the 2020 artifacts is ongoing at the lab in Austin, but I'll describe a few things that happened or that they found in the field. In the area of the brick feature that I showed in the previous slide, they found a decorative heel plate, a collection of musket balls, buttons, and a nickel from 1888. Most of these artifacts were located near the feature and not in the more open areas of the unit. In the two other units, they found a lot of animal bone, some glass and metal artifacts, including nails, wire, some large pieces of chain, and a hoe blade. Once we have more information from these artifacts, we'll be able to draw more comparisons about how this area relates to other spaces at Varner Hogg, and also how it relates to other archaeological sites from the same time period. The 2022 excavations were my first time working on the site, as I just come on in the fall of 2021. This year, or that year, we continued in the same area of Structure 3, and we also finished the incomplete unit from 2020. And we excavated two more 2 by 2 meter units adjacent to the 2020 units. You can see the map from the 2020 and 2022 units in the bottom left corner. The red rectangle on the right represents Structure 1. No solid foundations or architectural features were encountered during the 2022 excavations. A 1 course thick layer of brick rubble was encountered in the unit next to the one that had the brick in 2020. It's possible that these units for 2020 and 2022 were not placed on top of architectural features, or that Structure 3 is a lot more disturbed than we previously thought. The tent was set up for the entire year, or for the entire field season for 2022, just to kind of get around the rainy season. Artifacts recovered from the 2022 excavations were similar to those in 2020. A large fragment of a pot was found and sent for conservation. Buttons, animal bones, ceramics, pipe stems, glass, and a variety of nails and barbed wire were collected. No munitions, heel plates, or currency were found like in 2020. The transfer print ceramic that you see in the top right was identified as chess players, and the copyright for the design dates to 1835. The 2022 artifacts are also being worked on in Austin with the 2020 artifacts. Once finished, they will all move back to the Levi Jordan Plantation, where they're going to be held in our on-site collection storage facility. Students from Rice University curated 2 reports for the 2020 and 2022 excavation years, and then a final 2020 and 2022 report is being worked on by Historical Commission and Rice archaeologists. Here you can see the final map of the 3 Rice field seasons at VHP. Previous years had 10 to 15 students and 2 local interns for the excavations. The 2023 year had 4 students and 2 local interns. So the smaller size led us to scale back the size of the units to 1 by 1 meters so that we would complete on time. So unit North 40, North 0, West 40, which is the first little green one next to the big black square, is adjacent to the feature that was located in 2020. So all 3 of these years worked at Structure 3. A layer of brick rubble was located in the unit adjacent to the 2022 or to the 2020 unit with the mostly intact brick feature. The brick was 1 course thick again and very degraded. It was removed as it became loose during excavation. And then the tents were not used this year due to the small number of students and because we had some smaller pop-ups available. The weather turned out to be a lot more pleasant than the last couple of years. Artifacts recovered from the 2023 field season include many ceramic pipe fragments, shell, bone, prosser, and metal buttons, a brass buckle, writing slate fragments, and a harmonica reed fragment. Nails, plain ceramics, and animal bones were also recovered. 2023 was the first year that students and interns were able to process artifacts in the Levi Jordan lab. They have all been cleaned and cataloged and are awaiting a more detailed analysis at this time. And then the students are currently working on a 2023 report to be used in conjunction with Rice University and THC final report for 2023. And so overall, we were not able to locate any intact foundation remnants of structure 3. This could be due to the foundation being degraded even more than when TPWD first tested it, or it could be due to the placement of our units. More work is needed to locate the Texas Parks and Wildlife foundations and to continue to flesh out the boundaries of structure 3. Across several of the units, a 1 course thick, very degraded brick rubble layer was found underneath the sod at about 10 centimeters, with some variations. It was documented and removed as the layers became loose. Many of the bricks do not seem to be articulated. More research is needed to figure out what, if anything, that this layer represents. These photos show the bottom 4 units, and the top photo shows the brick before it was removed, and the bottom shows the brick after it was removed. At this moment, we think that it could have potentially served as a patio or walkway for the structure, or it could also just been rubble fill that has been compacted over many years of walking and machinery at site. And so for each of the 3 years, a structure from motion photogrammetry model was created when the excavations had finished up. These models help us to see the stratigraphy and features of the excavations after they're closed. They also help us to perform outreach and education about the site. So all these models are hosted on the Levi Jordan Plantation Sketchfab site. So the 2022-23 main house stabilization project. Some of the more recent archaeological work done on the plantation relates to the upcoming house restoration project. New ADA sidewalks and a wheelchair ramp will be installed, and parts of the porches and foundation will be preserved and restored. The wheelchair ramp is going to be installed in the door, or to the door that you see in the bottom left photo. A shovel testing survey was conducted in late summer, early fall of 2022 to see if the new sidewalk and ramp were going to impact any prehistoric deposits or any historic features. 42 shovel tests were excavated around the house. Many historic artifacts spanning the entire occupation of the site were recovered. Prehistoric artifacts were found mixed in with the historic artifacts. Overall, the main house is about a half a foot to a few feet of soil that has been mixed up pretty good over the past 200 years. Parks and Wildlife mentioned that they believe the prehistoric artifacts were in an intact layer below the historic artifacts, but this survey recovered prehistoric artifacts tens of centimeters above modern and historic construction materials. So we were finding prehistoric debitage and ceramics underneath modern galvanized, or on top of modern galvanized nails and screws and things that have been used to fix up the house. There may be intact prehistoric deposits around the house, but they're either deeper than any of our shovel tests went, or they're in areas that we did not test. Where did I go? Pretend you didn't see any of that. And so, of course, the only feature that we found during this shovel testing survey was directly in the path of the wheelchair ramp. So an unknown handmade brick rubble layer was found in a shovel test between the side door and the AC pad. You can see the the feature that or the brick layer in the bottom right photo, and then you can see the location of it in the bottom left photo with the red box. So in December 2022, myself and our other site archaeologists returned to excavate a 1 by 1 meter unit over the positive shovel test. We wanted to determine the extent and possible function of this brick. The soils were similar to the rest of the main house yard. Prehistoric, historic, and modern artifacts were mixed through the entire excavation. The brick feature appeared about 30 centimeters below the surface and expanded across most of the unit. The northwestern corner of the unit appears to have been disturbed and excavated through at some point in the past, which you can see in the bottom left photo, kind of that cutout in the top right. The bricks were very degraded and did not seem to be articulated in any particular way. Because the northwest corner was already damaged, we decided to excavate through the northern section of the unit to get a profile of the brick. We learned that the brick is only 1 course thick and that there are still disturbed soils underneath this brick layer. Here are two structure for motion models that we created for the test unit. We created one before we excavated through the brick layer and then one when we finished the unit. So in January 2023, after a meeting with park managers, division leaders, and THC regional and state archaeologists, we decided that it was decided that the entire amount and extent of the brick rubble layer should be learned before any construction happens on site. Because the entire yard was determined to be mixed contexts and the construction was probably going to impact this area anyway, approval was given to expand the test using shovels. The fill was not to be screened, but any artifacts seen by the naked eye were to be removed. And then due to a rainy winter, the 2023 excavations and other ongoing projects, this excavation started in January and is still ongoing at this moment. During excavations, a salt glazed stoneware pipe was discovered. You can see it in the bottom left photo. This pipe appears to be the drainage system for the gutters that was installed during the Hogg renovations in the 1920s. The pipe is imprinted with San Antonio Sewer Works. Although it's hard to tell in these photos, the drain pipe for the southwest and the southeast corner comes together in a junction and then flows out to Varner Creek. You can kind of see the general area where these go in the bottom right corner with these terrible arrows that I threw over the photo. This pipe system appears to be the outside boundary for the brick layer. The layer goes underneath the sidewalk and the AC pad. A few centimeters of dirt have been left on top of this brick rubble layer for protection from the elements. We are going to strip the layer, clean up the feature, and then photograph and create a 3D model of the area. When we're mostly finished with the cleanup, we plan to invite the public out to help clean up and do documentation. So stay tuned to our social media pages if any of you want to come out and work on this project. In doing research for this survey, we saw that Parks and Wildlife archaeologists encountered the brick rubble adjacent to the house in the 1981 excavations. So we know the northern boundary of this rubble layer is the house. The southern and western boundaries are the drain pipes, and the eastern boundary is somewhere under the AC pad. TPWD noted a thick, compacted rubble layer that was located along the southern wall of the plantation house and underneath the flower bed. They mentioned that this rubble probably related to a past construction phase of the house and represented a significant element in the mansion complex's archaeological potential. So you can see the 1981 excavation map from Parks and Wildlife in the top left, and then I kind of zoom in on the area near the AC pads where they did the testing, and then you can see the rubble layer in their photograph on the right. Our testing and TPWD's testing showed that the majority of the yard around the house is disturbed. Much of this dirt appears to be fill dirt that was brought in during or after the Hogg renovations and then mixed on site. This is shown by many brick features such as our rubble layer and some of the original brick sidewalks, several centimeters below the modern surface. More work is needed to figure out the exact function of our brick frame, or from our brick feature. One idea that we have at the moment is that it might have served as a patio for the Hogg family's, as a patio for the house, or was related to the Hogg family's planned expansion on the southern side of the house. You'll kind of see for both projects, if it's a flat layer of brick, we're just guessing maybe patio. But when we look at old pictures of the house, we can see that there doesn't appear to be anything on this area. So the top left photo is probably from the 1890s, and there's kind of nothing below that balcony right there. And then the top right photo is somewhere after 1900, but before 1920. And there's also really nothing there below that balcony. The bottom right map, sorry, the bottom left map is a 1916 map of proposed additions to the site. And so you can see that the Hogg family wanted to add on an entire wing that mirrored the kitchen dining room that we have now. And then the bottom right sketch shows additions to the house. And so some of these additions were added, some weren't. So the little pathway outlined in red was supposed to be the path for the new addition, but on the plans it says wing not added. And so we know that they had plans for new construction in this area, but there was no, or we know that they had plans for the construction, but we don't know what, if any, construction was started in the area. And so, yeah, as I mentioned, stay tuned to our social media updates. So if you want to come out and help with this project, and also stay tuned for our social medias for the house renovations that are starting this summer. So the construction company will be blocking off the house for that time, but we'll be doing periodic tours throughout the construction to kind of show what's going on with the house. And so we'll have times for those tours up on our social media as well. Yeah, and so I want to thank y'all for letting me come out today, and thanks Sue for letting me come out and talking me into doing another presentation for y'all. Are there any questions? I can stop sharing my screen and answer.
Yeah, I've got a question real quickly.
Yes, sir.
So your social media is Facebook? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, so we have Facebook and Instagram for both sites.
Oh, yeah, okay, gotcha. Um, I think it was a well done presentation, and I like your graphics. And specifically, they're really well done.
Thank you.
I got a few questions.
Sure, go
Yes.
ahead, James.
Okay. How many slave quarters did he have?
So we don't know an exact number, but two people who were enslaved on the property were interviewed during the WPA narratives, and so one of them said she remembered 18 slave quarters on the property.
How many?
18.
18 slave quarters?
Yes, sir. And we know where probably 3, maybe 4 are.
Okay. So the 1860 slave census will have that number on there for you.
Okay.
And you're saying 16, how many total population were we talking about?
So the max was around mid 80s, and then it fluctuated from like low 60s to mid 80s depending on the year.
Okay. But according to like the 1860 slave census, how many slaves were on the property?
It was low 80s at that time.
Low 80s?
I think 84 or 86. I don't know the exact number for Varner.
Okay. So you had 18 houses. That's roughly 4, 5, or 6 people per house.
And then we know that they were the double pen cabins with the family on each side, so we don't know if 18 represents 18 individual double pen cabins or 18 individual like family units. That makes sense.
Okay. How about, have you tried Sue yet to find the walls for or the foundations for your slave cabins yet?
Sue's
She's pretty good on the Ouija one.
She's been out there a few times looking.
Yeah, and I think didn't Catherine have Tiffany come out
Yeah, and so there's some
GPR?
there was some when Tiffany came out, they worked at the sugar mill and do testing over there. And then the site archaeologist and I have done a very, very quick and dirty GPR survey of Structure 3, but we need to go out and do a more extensive GPR survey. It's just we're both learning on the GPR, and it's not fun to push that thing around such a big area that we have out there.
Yeah, I know when I was out there, I think the first time with Molly and Catherine, I was kind of witch between structure 1 and structure 3 without knowing exactly where structure 2 was, and I hit it with with the wands. And then when I went over inside the picnic loop, I was hitting stuff that definitely showed rectangles. That so there's still a lot out there that needs to be investigated.
For sure.
Yep.
And then we know Columbia Lakes, the subdivision, is right there adjacent to it all, and so we don't know how much was lost to the development of that subdivision as well.
True.
More questions? Dead silence?
I was looking at that, I couldn't read the map that well. I knew the drawings for the mansion had been done probably back in the 30s or someplace in there.
Mm-hmm.
And what was the width of the foundation wall for the big house? Did
You
it
know,
have it on?
I should know that. I can look.
I couldn't quite read it on that map, but that that wall would step out pretty wide. So it down at its base, it'd probably be 4 or 5 foot wide.
Mm-hmm. So I know I've seen in the Parks and Wildlife their testing of the walls how it kind of steps in on the brick foundations of the house,
Mhm.
so it goes down. But it's a lot. It kind of goes a lot deeper than what
Yeah.
we found right there.
Yeah, but there's also that concrete sidewalk that was added sometime later, so that impacts being able to find those footers.
Yeah. So hopefully we'll see more because they're going to be ripping all those for the restorations coming up this summer. All of those sidewalks around the house are going to be taken up. They're going to dig down to the bottom of the foundations and kind of repoint and spray a bunch of chemicals on the foundations to try to weatherproof them, and they're going to make some improved drainage around the site so the bricks won't degrade as fast.
Good.
So there's going to be a lot of stuff that comes out of the ground whenever they start doing that.
But Sue probably volunteered to go over to West Columbia and dig in Rachel's yard and check that out for you.
Reese has my number. What I find unique about this, for the history for Varner Hogg is the probate records.
For sure.
They're loaded with material. They have I forgot what years, but when they were having the owner committed, trying to have him committed, all of his neighbors came in and testified against him. And of course, one of the things they found disgraceful was he was out in the fields directing his slaves in his nightshirt. And then of course, when he went to New Orleans and picked up a quadroon to come live with him, well, that was no too. And so, that was another bad mark against him. And so he was racking up bad mark after bad mark.
Definitely.
So But the historical record for him is there's ton of material on the families.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, if there's no other questions, the only thing we had on the agenda, I know Chris wanted to talk a little bit, so I was going to give the floor to Chris. Here's Chris.
Good evening, everybody. I have some news about the project to build a replica Fort Velasco down at Surfside. You may recall that I participate with the Cradle of Texas Conservancy, which has had a plan for many years to do that project, but we've never really had the land or the funds to do that. But recently we've decided, after finishing our research and engineering plan for a replica fort, we've decided to roll out a fundraising campaign, for that and to go after it big time. We decided on this a couple of months ago, and were heartened last month to hear that Senator Joan Huffman, after we had visited her office, had included in Senate Bill 30 an allocation for $500,000 to go to the replica project. The bill is not yet passed, but they're optimistic it will be. This joins the $500,000 that the CTC is willing to donate to the project in cash, and $300,000 worth of land that we're willing to liquidate. So we think we may have upwards of 1.3 million already toward our fundraising goal. So we're quite optimistic on that. In addition, this past weekend we held our first public event, or hosted a table at Surfside's Treaty of Velasco anniversary and reenactment, signing event, and began to roll out that fundraising campaign. We were heartened to have a visitor there, a man who was the chair of the trustees for the San Jacinto Museum and Battlefield Association, that was quite taken with our plans, and he's agreed to help us interact with THC. That's because the Senate bill actually allocates the $500,000 to THC. So I've been in contact with Jeff Durst to try to get a meeting or a phone call with THC, to talk about this allocation and perhaps invite them to participate in the design process for the replica fort. So I'm happy to report that we're finally moving forward on this, long desired goal. Does anybody have any questions about that?
Yeah. So where are you going to put the fort?
Well,
Question.
Quit
the
laughing.
current plan suggests that it be placed in the current confines of Surfside Jetty Park. If you know where the parking lot and bathroom building are at the very end of Fort Velasco Boulevard, you drive down that road down the island right into that parking lot. If you turn to your left as you enter the parking lot, the property to the left is large enough for the fort to be placed there. This is on top of a very high elevation, at least for that area, spoil mound, so it has an excellent view of the area. You can see directly at the water in the harbor channel, the old river, and you can see the water actually on the beach, off the beach, because of the height of the place. Does that answer your question, James?
Well, you're away from where the real fort was, so that's good.
Yes, we've always felt
So
like
you pretty much picked a empty location, I think.
well, yes, that property is newly accreted land and has no historic structures on it, which is one of the advantages. We've never wanted to place the new replica atop the old place because it then prevents further archaeology work. In this way, we have the best of both worlds. And also, you must realize that there's a 1/4 mile of beach that has accreted since the 1830s. So if we put it in the old place, the original place, you know, you're more than a quarter mile away from the beach. So it doesn't make a lot of sense to visitors to place it there. So due to infrastructure of parking lot, bathroom, utilities, elevation, the traffic in and out of the Surfside Jetty Park, we have entered in partnership, you know, with the County Parks Department for a project. We expect most of our fundraising to come from high dollar grants or industrial donors in the area, but we're also including a sort of a community fundraising project we euphemistically call the pennies from school children approach. That the, you know, Alamo was saved, as was the Statue of Liberty created, you know, so called with the pennies of school children. So we're also allowing small donors, local donors, to contribute and feel like they are part of the project, is part of the initial plan. So I'm very happy to report that we're no longer sitting on our hands, but we're close to finishing the engineering plan and felt it was time to roll out the fundraising campaign. Anything else?
Super. I mean, you're moving forward. Can't ask for any more than that.
Well, we hope so. So,
Well, guys and gals,
by the way, can I add, we do have part of this campaign is we have created a new online presence. We've spiffed up the Cradle of Texas Conservancy website, and we also have a new Facebook page that lays out a lot of the plans for the engineering plan and the fundraising approach. So if you want to look up those things, you're certainly welcome to and have a look. That's it. Thanks.
nice. Thanks, Chris, for the update. Any other updates or questions or?
Clint, are you keeping up with what's going on with the lighthouse over on Bolivar?
Yeah, I saw your message, and yeah, I am. It's interesting that they're going to try to redo that lighthouse. So what we're talking about
Yeah.
is the lighthouse and the corner, if you will, on the peninsula. It's kind of a dark brown structure, very heavily rusted, and they're going to try to restore it, which is a super project, you know, as far as I'm concerned. You know, say let's save some real history. So yeah, I'm keeping up with it. Pretty cool.
Good. Well, I didn't know whether it went through when I sent it to you, so I just wanted to make sure it did.
No, that was great. Great. I'm not a big Facebook person like James is, you know. I got into Facebook because Elton Pruitt said his archaeology was going to be there, but that sort of didn't happen either, you know. Now I get 1 million Facebook messages that be honest, I never look at.
Yeah.
So anyway, well, hey, with that said, hopefully we'll see everybody at field school, and thanks for coming to the meeting. So see you
Thanks,
guys
Reese.
later.
Yeah.
Oh,
Thank y'all for letting me come out.
All right, thanks, Reese.
all right.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Oh, shoot.